Welcome to this beautiful topic on humility. A few months ago, someone asked me how to become humble, and honestly, I found it a strange question at that time. But he did so because he had embarked on a religious and spiritual journey and is quite eager to put things right in himself, as we must all do. Because on a religious and spiritual journey, we're often told that in order to evolve consciously and to make it through the gates of heaven, we must all become humble human beings. Long ago, the lack of this quality or the absence of it was usually evident in and therefore associated predominantly with very successful and well accomplished people, people with status. But in today's world, where spirituality appears to be on the rise, the lack of humility exists not only in successful and well accomplished people and people, the average human being like you and me, but it's also evident in spiritual gurus and those people who are coming upon and acquiring spiritual knowledge, giving them the feeling that I know, I know it, which is quite different to I know it, and I'm so grateful to know what I know at this point. So stick around, and together let us explore this topic of humility and understand one of the major causes. What is the reason it is so difficult for us to become humble human beings? So, what is humility? Humility is really a feeling and an attitude of meekness and modesty. It's not being proud and haughty, although it doesn't mean to say you do not have a sense of pride in whatever it is you do. Of course, please have a sense of pride because then you're going to be doing something energetically and beautifully with a sense of pride, a sense of worth, of goodness from within you. I like to say that humility is really a simplicity of mind, and therefore it is a state of being. So you don't have to expressions of humility wouldn't come from just a state of feeling or some attitude, but it is a state of being. So humility will arise naturally out of you. It wouldn't be something forced that you have to force to feel it. You just are humble. And in order to become humble, we need to understand why it is so difficult for us to become humble. What prevents us from doing so? And when we can realize this, I guarantee you, humility becomes much more easily attainable. And believe it or not, there is only one major cause that prevents us from becoming humble, just that it disguises itself in varying ways. And that cause is our identity, the sense of who I am, is tied up to something external of us or with somebody that we place ourselves above. We place ourselves above others that makes us feel we are superior. To become humble means that this identity we created in our minds now becomes threatened. And what happens? A fear begins to arise as to who am I? Who am I without this identity? This image of self importance, this feeling of being better than others, of being viewed as superior. These questions, when they arise, actually reflect that there is no real confidence in who you are because everything that makes up your identity is actually sitting on shaky ground external of you. Things, it's changeable. Everything external of you is changeable. So, who you are, the sense of that is based on changeable things changeable situations, changeable people. And your way to preserve your identity of self importance is to hold on to everything that you believe makes up that identity. And this is attachment. So, this attachment makes you become quite stubborn, arrogant, and even judgmental at times. And many people are scared to let go of their attachment to their identity for the simple reason of being scared or having this fear of becoming weak. These qualities, when they are expressed in your attitude, your speech, and your actions, are actually telling others that you are not humble, but rather that you are a jerk. And therefore, you are actually weak because there is an inferiority complex that actually exists in you, not a superiority complex. So, how many of you out there are jerks? I suggest start examining yourself. And I know it doesn't sound nice, but this is what we are when we're not humble. You see, to my surprise, I was one. I was a jerk because my arrogance and judgments were rather subtle. It was a silent judgment inside of me, in my thoughts, in my mind, in my way of thinking. I wasn't walking around puffed up, so it wasn't really noticeable externally. That kind of arrogance and lack of humility is difficult to detect in yourself unless you are constantly examining your thoughts, your feelings and emotions, your behaviors, your actions, which I am constantly doing. So thankfully, I was able to see it in myself. And that seeing, I can assure you, was very painful. But I'm so grateful to have realized it. And the realization, the seeing is one thing. The realization now is when you can actually convert that arrogance and judgment into a compassion for others and having a sense of gratitude for whatever it is you know and whatever it is you have. And I was grateful that I was able to do that because I can tell you this, when that happened, I didn't have much and I didn't know much. But this subtle lack of humility is the very thing that will prevent you from evolving consciously and making it through the gates of heaven. And to recognize this lack of humility in myself, this subtle lack, and being able to convert it into compassion and a feeling of gratitude and understanding of others took a lot of humility. And this humility that was bestowed upon me from my ability or my willingness to, my painful willingness to see the truth in myself, this, this seeing, I call it a grace. And to me, to be able to do that and become humble and can do the conversion took a lot of strength and courage. And therefore, being humble is very far from being weak, and it is actually a strength. So I encourage you to start noticing these signs that may be subtle or even obvious, the signs of lack of humility in you. You know, such as when you become so complacent and you say, I know it all. I have been through it all. Nothing can shake me. You are above it all. That is a sign of lack of humility. When you start to compare yourself to others that keep you above them, and you cannot come down from your pedestal to help others, shows no sign of gratitude because you walk around, I am self-made, and therefore, you know what? They can do the same. No humility and understanding and compassion for others. In reality, you may actually be better and better off than others. And this is wonderful but recognize this simply as a fact and a blessing in your life, not as some identity to create superiority and false sense of importance and a separation in your mind between you and others. Now you're going to be in a better position and state of being to help others humbly and be a blessing to them with sincere compassion and a higher understanding of them and their situation. Have you ever found yourself in a situation whereby it is lesser and lower than what you are capable of? In other words, you are actually better than where you are? I have, and I can guarantee you that's a very painful place to be in. And if that is happening, it means that life is humbling you in a few ways, or maybe in just one way, and I'll share with you some of those ways. Life may actually be humbling you to teach you something about your choices, your weaknesses that got you into that lesser and lower place. Life could be humbling you to appreciate what you had because you took it for granted, thinking that you would always have it. Or life may actually be humbling you, allowing you to fall so that you do not, you cannot judge others and somehow think you are better than others. And one of the ways to really become humble is to fall from that pedestal of yours. So I recommend, if you find yourself in such a situation, start eating humble pie and learn your lesson, examine your choices, become strong, get out of that lower place that you find yourself, otherwise you're going to be stuck there. And this would no longer be humility. This is actually a weakness. And if you're feeling humble that you're in a lesser place, which we must all find ourselves feeling, when we find ourselves in such a situation, we must become humble, but don't allow it to become a false humility to keep you stuck there. If you're capable of more, rise up. And likewise, if you find yourself so above it all, eat humble pie and become humble and not be judgmental of others. Humility, when it is false, can actually work against you and keep you down. And I want you to recognize this quality in you, because if it persists, this type of humility will restrict you spiritually, because it's really not true humility. It's a false sense of humility. If you start, for example, if you start comparing yourself to others, but now instead of placing yourself above them, you start to place yourself below them, just to give the impression you are humble. This is rather pretentious. Or if you are actually feeling that you're really below them, then it means you have low self-esteem. This is not humility. Humility is not about walking with your head down and your tail between your legs. All this will do is invite people to walk over you and take advantage of you. And this is when humility works against you. Even if you feel you are humble or you are actually humble, there is no need to walk with your head down and your tail between your legs, because this is inviting people to really take advantage of you, especially women. Okay? If somebody compliments you and you try to deflect it by putting yourself lower than the recognition, this could also be not humility. You see, humility is a graciousness, and it's a quiet confidence within yourself. And you could actually, in a case like that, when somebody compliments you, all you need to do is just say bow and say thank you. And that's a beautiful sign of humility. Just don't let the compliment go to your head. There's this beautiful saint, an Indian saint. She's referred to as Amma, and she's also referred to here in the West as the hugging saint. And I've been blessed to be able to be in her presence whenever she comes to Toronto in Canada. And it's a loving and beautiful experience to be in her presence. And Amma, the hugging saint, has received many awards and recognition for her good works. She doesn't refuse the awards or reject them to make it look as though she's humble. She accepts these honors in a very humble and gracious manner. And she accepts the compliments not because she needs it, but she's doing it lovingly and graciously to honor the people who are honoring her. So she shows respect for them by accepting the awards. So when you are complimented, there's no need to deflect the compliment and try to put yourself below it. Just be gracious and accept it with a beautiful heart and humility. So, what are the benefits of being humble? Well, first of all, you wouldn't lose friends and really good people, people who are important to you, people who have values, people who have dignity and some kind of respect for themselves. You see, arrogance and superiority complex are big turnoffs. Who really wants to have a jerk as a friend or as a family member? Humility opens you up to new ideas, new understandings, new discoveries, and new ways of doing things and being that may be far greater than what you would have otherwise known. Because humility keeps you open. Arrogance closes you off and cuts you off from anything more expansive. And when you become humble in this way, it facilitates growth and expansion in you, without which you will stay stuck only at a certain level, with a certain level of knowledge, and you would remain stubborn and never ascend. And we'll all live in a time of ascension, and you want to ascend and not be left behind. Staying open does not mean that you have to take in everything that is being fed to you out there. But humility just allows you to be in that state of openness, to at least examine before prematurely writing off any potential beneficial thing. Then you're in an expansive place to better determine what to toss out and what to keep. In the Holy Bible, in Proverbs 11:2, it says, "When pride comes, then disgrace comes, but with humility comes wisdom." You see, if you do not become humble, life has a way of humbling you, as life is very fragile, and whatever you haven't gained, you can lose quicker than it took for you to get these and fall from grace, as the only way to make you become humble is through disgrace. And I don't want this to happen to you or to me, as it is a very painful thing to go through. So from today, become humble. I would like to encourage you to get a copy of my book, Insights a Life Companion, available at Amazon. In this book, there's a wonderful chapter on humility, chapter 42, to become humble. And I can guarantee you, if you were to read that chapter, it will really open you up and allow you to become a little more expansive and become aware of humility and how it works in your life. Just like there are expressions of lack of humility in terms of your arrogance, the way you insult people, how you put people down, the bitterness in your words and actions towards others, there are also expressions of humility. In the open space of humility, you would find beautiful qualities such as forgiveness, You can easily feel and say that you are sorry, because in that space of humility, there is no arrogance and therefore there is no self righteousness. So it is very easy to recognize where you went wrong and to step up and take corrective measures. You see, seeing where you went wrong is not enough. Taking the corrective measures, that is the clear sign of humility, the expression of humility. In that open space of humility, that is where you're going to find gratitude also. This is where you no longer take anything for granted. You see everything as a blessing in your life. And in that space, that is when you are capable of helping others, stepping down from your pedestal and reaching out and being sincere with others without any judgment of their situation. All of these are beautiful expressions of humility. I would like to share with you a little quote here from my book on humility. It's chapter 42, Be Humble. It says here, humility is a state of being whereby one is non judgmental, accepts that one does not know, knows what one knows without boasting, and has what one has without deliberate and pretentious display, but is grateful and feels blessed and lovingly shares. So, to answer that person's question, how do you become humble? I would say the first thing to do is to at least start off by becoming very alert and attentive to the qualities in you that are associated with lack of humility. Qualities such as your arrogance, your inability to say you are sorry and feel it, your lack of gratitude, your feeling of superiority, some sense of aboveness, being above others, your false self importance, even your low self esteem, and when you belittle people. Observe and recognize their destructive effect on your inner being and on your relationships, how they hinder your spiritual evolution. Because I can guarantee you, with such qualities existing in you, there is no way you could feel like a beautiful soul. Now, go on and detach from your sense of false self importance, your self righteousness, superiority, and even your false lowliness. False lowliness. Cut the umbilical cord that is tied to this false identity, and you will set yourself free. Realize that everything that you have is all by grace, whether it is knowledge, it is status, it is money, it is material comfort, family, education, things, or wisdom. See all of this as being gifts of grace from a power that is greater than the little me, that divine power that we all like to call God. Have compassion and understanding for those below you. While you may not be able to help them, at least you can send them loving thoughts instead of low judgmental ones. You see, you can't help everybody because not everybody is ready to be helped. So, for those people, instead of looking down at them, why not just help build them up with your high energy level thoughts, loving thoughts for them, so that they may come to know and do better? The last thing you must do is cast your pearls towards swines. That's what it says in the Holy Bible. Because if you do that, you're trying to impose something upon people who are not ready to receive it. You let it go, otherwise, you're going to waste your energy, time, and effort. So, this is instead of doing that, you send them good wishes, good thoughts, not judgmental ones. In the Holy Bible, in Matthew 18:4, it says, whosoever shall humble himself As this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. You see, peace is associated with heaven. And when we are humble, we are in heaven because we experience a great peace in humility. And why this happens is because you are no longer carrying around in you, in your mind, all these false identities and false constructs of the mind. So there's spaciousness in the mind, and when there's spaciousness, peace alights. So I encourage you to become humble and gracious, and you may find that life would start bowing back at you.